how big a piece is, from what you've seen and from what you've read and have heard from folks, how big a piece is staffing in the work violence equation?
Oh, it's huge. It's
Mm-hmm.
huge. If someone asked me if you could only fix one thing for nursing of the, 20 that need to be fixed, what would it be? Hands down, staffing. Federally mandated staffing ratios would not fix everything, but it would absolutely fix the vast majority of things. If
Yeah.
nurses just had the time to deal with things, to properly monitor
Mm-hmm.
patients, how many potential acts of violence, for example, would we pick up on and
Right.
avoid and, report and do something proactive about before it's too late,
Or how many
right?
patients would be less agitated and aggravated
Mhm.
to the point of wanting to lash out, because they're not having to wait, or they're in pain,
Exactly.
or it's a whole catapult of things
Yeah.
that could
Oh,
improve.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole box of Pandoras, right?
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now, here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hey, everybody. Kevin McFarland here from the Art of Emergency Nursing, and thanks for downloading this episode, and thanks for listening to the podcast. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, please leave a rating and review. It's a great way to help the show out and help other nurses like you find this podcast. In this episode, I have a great two-part episode with the nurses from Nurses Uncorked. That's Jessica Seitz and Nurse Erica. If you have social media, you've seen these nurses before. We talk about how they use their voice and social media to advocate for nursing and try to make nursing just a little bit better. You are going to enjoy this episode with these two nurse superstars. Sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of 2. All right. So this week on the podcast, I have not one, but 2 guests for you. 2 guests that you have probably, if you have a social media account, you have heard of. These 2 guests are both have an amazing social media presence. And not only do they have a social media presence, they are using it for good. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to introduce to you Nurse Erica and Nurse Jessica Seitz. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you
It's
for having us.
It's weird to have somebody else introduce me. I'm not used to that. Introducing people.
And I usually, when people tell me, they're like, well, how do we introduce you? I'm like, I can just introduce myself. Like, I'm pretty laid back like that. I'm like, whatever. So
Yeah, it's all good, right? Well, thank you for having us. Yeah.
one time I was at a conference and I gave them this amazing write-up of my bio, and they were reading it and they're like, wow. And you can tell they're like, wow, okay. And then they're like, they started getting a little bit more kind of out there and a little bit like, championship and alligator wrestling and this and that. And they're like, and then the very last line said, and none of these things are true, but you're going to have a good time anyway. And they thought it was funny, but we kind of wanted a serious intro. And I'm like, it's fine. So first, just start off by telling the guests who maybe they live in a social media hole and have not heard of you guys, but tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your background.
Erica, you go first. You take it away. Introduce yourself first.
All right. So I'm Nurse Erica on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of them. I'm a registered nurse. I've been doing advocacy online on social media and then parlaying it into the real world for several years now. Multiple passions like safe staffing, violence against nurses, unionizing, all these things. And I am the co-host with Nurse Jessica Seitz of the Nurses Uncorked podcast.
Woo, woo. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be a guest on their podcast not that long ago. That was a
That was
blast.
fun. That was a lot. We had a lot of fun.
Great episode.
It was a
Yes.
blast.
So I'm obviously a co-host, like Erica was saying, in Nurses Uncorked podcast. I'm the polar opposite of Nurse Erica, pretty much. I am also on all forms of social media. I'm at Nurse Jessica Seitz. And Erica and I kind of we got together. It was we actually started talking about this today. Erica's, I remember you called me up and you were like, let's start a podcast.
He did. It's all my fault.
I did. So I do comedy. Mine's mainly comedy, but it's comedy with, I like to say comedy with a hidden message, or not necessarily hidden, but it's being an advocate, but in a different way. I may not have all the facts, but I know what's going on, and I try to kind of call it out and put a light on what's happening in nursing today so that it's kind of relatable. So yeah, Erica and I met several years ago through social media, and I kind of stumbled upon thinking like, I'd love to do a podcast, but like, I don't know how much people just want to kind of hear about like me talking about all the things that are wrong and about it, because that's kind of my sense of humor. So I called Erica. I was like, I think it would be a good balance. You do the facts and I do the comedy. And that's kind of how we came and created our podcast.
So how many episodes do you guys have of your podcast you guys have so far?
42?
46 now?
Wow,
God,
that's pretty good.
46.
46, yeah.
We've not missed a week yet. Not
Not
one
week.
Good for
Knock on
you.
wood.
Good for you. See,
Not-
I'm a slacker. I'm like, we'll do it next week. It'd be fine.
Not one. Every Tuesday, 9 a.m., there has been an episode.
Congratulations.
I know. Isn't that crazy? If
It's
we can
hard
make
work.
it to the year mark, Erica, 52 weeks, we need to have a big
It's
Yeah.
hard work.
hurrah.
So I
It
just had
is.
the anniversary of my podcast and realized I've been doing this for 5 years,
Wow. That's
No.
awesome.
which is funny because I figured I'd do it for maybe a year and then I'd get bored or people would get bored or, the 5 people I thought were going to be listening would get tired of listening and stop. So I'd had to stop. But yeah, it's been 5 years. And I don't think people realize like how much work behind the scenes. Like it seems like it's easy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's just you and someone talking, but there's a lot,
Yeah.
the editing, the getting it out, the putting it out. There's a lot of work to it. So, to
There-
do one every week for, 40 something weeks is pretty amazing.
I know. I
Yeah.
can't believe, like, there's been a couple times that we're like, are we going to do one this week? Like,
Literally at the last minute when it needs to get done. If we're going to meet the Tuesday mark, yeah. She'll call me up and say, are we going to do one? And I was like, I was thinking about it. We should.
I know, it's crazy,
no,
but
it's good.
I love it. I didn't realize how much I would love it. I really love it. It's nice. And I was telling Erica, instead of, what we typically do, which is short form video format, it's nice to have the ability to really explain yourself in long form. Like, I feel like you get your message across a lot better with podcasting, obviously, than you do with short video clips,
It's a good way for people to get to know you, I find.
Yeah.
With the videos that both of y'all do, that very short form video, they may, get a feel for you, but they're not going to, it's a little bit different when you're on talking for an hour. And especially if it's like the two of you, then your audience, your fans are going to get to know you a little bit better. And I don't know how many times I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I feel like we're best friends. I feel like I know you. And I'm like, well,
right.
it's kind of cool, but they're,
It
they've
is
been
cool.
listening to you for, however long. And it's kind of crazy to think that, I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I, started my podcast and was just thrilled to realize that like strangers were listening to it. Like people I
Right?
didn't know. It wasn't just my friends, my family. I thought it was going to be me and my wife and maybe a couple friends that listened to it every week. But it's, you realize like people all over the world are listening and that's super cool. So
Yeah, it was neat, especially the last time me and Nurse Erica were together, to have people come up to us and, oh my gosh, I love your podcast. And I was like, are you our one listener? I'm like, you're the one.
like, you're the
No.
one. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
but it's nice, and it's nice to know that people are enjoying it and enjoying hearing what you have to
feels
say.
like safer. I think we were talking about that a couple weeks ago. For some reason, social media feels very, precarious at all times, right? There's always people waiting to attack you. But for some reason, the podcast feels like a safe space that we can really talk about things in detail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like things in short form can get misconstrued easily.
Mhm.
But if you have a longer format to be able to really articulate your stance behind something or how you feel about something, I was telling Erica, your message gets across so much better and well-rounded versus a 1 or 2 minute video where easily somebody could be like, I don't like the way she said that, or,
Yeah.
so I feel like it's my safe zone until maybe one day it won't be. But for now it is.
Now, you guys
Yeah.
typically, before we move on to the important stuff. Like I got to nerd out on podcasts a little bit. So who's been your favorite guest so far? And don't worry, we won't tell them.
Oh gosh.
Good question. I know who yours is, probably.
Mine? I would say my most starstruck and nervous episode and was John Edward, the psychic medium, just because I grew up watching him and he was a big celebrity. But in all honesty, I would say some of my favorite podcasts are just ones where it's just me and Erica, like where I feel the most comfortable and I just giggle or laugh hysterically. Like those ones also really stand out in my mind. So it's so hard though. I really enjoyed Redonda too.
Loved
There's
Redonda's
a
episodes. Yeah.
there's a lot of special ones.
For me, I think also John Edward, just because again, big fan of his for 20 plus years, and he was so gracious. But the ones that are really important to me are the ones where people have trusted us to tell their
Yeah.
story, and only us. So, for example, we had Michelle Hewins. She was the correctional nurse that was criminally charged in the death of an inmate, and she has not told her story anywhere
anybody.
other
Yep.
than with us. And then we had Sybil Garbo. She was the nurse that was prosecuted and put in prison for a while for defending herself against a coworker, another nurse. And
Crazy
Wow.
stories.
he told us, they felt safe with us. And then we had the family of Tristan Kate Smith. She
That was
is
a powerful
ER nurse
episode.
that took her own life and wrote a letter to my abuser. And I've grown very close to her father, and they, again, trusted us to come on and tell their story for the first time. So those are the ones that are really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Dream guest? I mean, you'd love to have on your podcast?
Ooh.
Oh gosh. Dream
would be-
guest. Does it have to be
you know
nursing?
what? Alex Wubbles. She is you know who that is, right? The
Yeah.
ER nurse in Utah that some years ago was a viral video that was arrested because she followed policy and refused to draw the labs on
Oh,
the
yes.
inebriated patient. And there was just a real jerk of a police officer there and arrested her. So I would love to have her on, and I would love to have, I don't for the life of me remember her name, it's terrible, but the nurse that was on the Miss America pageant that came out in scrubs and
Kelly
yes,
something.
yeah, reading her poem about nursing. And then that is ultimately what prompted the Show Me Your Stethoscope movement years ago. I would love to have her come on. Yeah.
Yeah, but so Alex Wubbles is my kind of dream guest that I'd love to have.
Really?
And
You too,
I would
huh?
love to interview her because I think she did, something really important for emergency nursing.
Right.
She was clear.
And what an incredible story to tell, though, from her perspective.
Mhm.
I would love it.
Yeah.
I would like to have Sassy Nurse on. That would
Would
be
love to have him on too. He's
yeah,
very
he's on primarily on TikTok. Just look up the Sassy Nurse and he tells it like it is and he's funny, like so funny. But he's not very keen on doing podcasts.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll talk him into it one day. We'll see. But I would love to
Yeah.
have him on. That'd be pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I would also love to have Scott, probably going to mispronounce his last name, Amaral, something like that. The Rhode Island psych nurse
Oh yeah.
that recently was brutally attacked by a psych patient to the point
Okay.
where people didn't think he would make it,
Wow.
and
That
is
was-
still rehabbing, recovering. I've chatted with him a few times, and it's still early stages. I think he's pursuing some legal things. So I would
Yeah.
love to one day have him on
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yeah. I think that would certainly be interesting. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of funny. For the most part, most of the people I've asked have said yes, and I've been, lucky that most of the folks that have been interested in interviewing, if I don't know them, somebody I know knows them, and it's a small nursing world, right?
Yeah, anybody that's out there kind of knows everybody a little
Somebody
bit.
knows somebody who knows somebody, and I've been lucky. There's a few people I've been, that keep saying they're going to do it, and then, we'll cancel or whatever, or be like, oh, let's postpone for this or this. And I'm working on one now. that I'd
I
love
will
to
say
hear.
we had Mike with Simple Nursing, He finally came on, and God bless him. I love that man. He is just a spazatron. He's
Yeah,
hysterical.
anytime.
But we had to reschedule a couple times, but we finally got him in there. But he's a hoot. He's a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet.
That was a
Yeah,
good
it's
episode.
kind of a small nursing world, right? Like I've been lucky
Mhm.
that most of the people that I've wanted to interview have been lucky enough to be able to interview. So that's
That's
cool. And there's people out there that I've reached out to and said, hey, yeah, one there's actually one nurse I reached out to that was in the news, and I reached out and said, hey, I'd love to interview you on the podcast. And they're like, talk to my publicist. And I'm like, if you have a publicist, I'm already not interested.
Wow.
I'm not looking to talk to your publicist. I just want to talk to you because you're an ER nurse and you were in the news, and like you did a good thing, even though it was probably hard. There's probably impact for you.
I'll say there was a short period of time that I had a publicist, but if somebody would reach out to me specifically, why can't you just schedule?
Yeah,
I've
just
never
get,
had a public.
just figure it out. So
Well,
I would
it was
never know.
it was a short time when Facebook was paying very well. We'll revisit that another day.
anyways,
Anywho,
the cool thing is it gives you guys a little time to kind of build your platform and get people to get to know
Yeah.
you and
yeah.
explore some of those cool nursing topics that may not have a voice otherwise. So that's the thing I love about podcasting. So
Yes, it is.
and
It's
one of the things I
amazing.
want to talk to you guys a little bit about is because you guys do a lot of advocacy work and kind of bringing in people to tell their stories and bringing up things. Erica, you specifically
Yes.
bringing up topics and bringing to light some of the things that maybe in nursing need a light shined on them. So I wanted to just kind of talk to you guys a little bit about that and your thoughts on that. It's been kind of cool that you've been able to use your platforms to do just that.
I want to say
You know,
for nurse Erica takes a lot of a beating. Honestly, I have to give her kudos because to talk about the hard stuff all the time, you always end up upsetting somebody or frustrating somebody
Always.
or recently she's been told that she's the reason that nursing is the way that it is, which yeah, and just because she's reporting what's going on in nursing, I feel like people get frustrated and they take their frustrations out on her a lot. So she's had a lot of backlash.
Look at the power you have to make nursing the way it is.
right? Isn't that
Right.
crazy?
She's amazing.
I mean, let's ignore the fact that these things existed before I was even a nurse. But yeah, sure. Let's blame it on me.
For sure. For sure.
There's
But-
this theme of like toxic positivity throughout nursing, right? And if you have worked at the bedside anytime in the last several years, then it's this constant push to, put on forward face and don't talk about the bad things, don't talk about the impossible working conditions and how dangerous it is and all these things. And just if we were just more positive, if we just focused on self-care, if we just,
Right. Did some
these things,
yoga.
everything would be sunshine and roses and there wouldn't be any issues. And so I am really just of the school of thought that that's bullshit. And that I have this platform. And so I'm going to use it to be 100% transparent 100% of the time. So I'm going to tell you what's really going on, regardless of how ugly it is. It's not going to make you feel good, but it's going to be true. And it needs to be talked about because it has been swept under the rug for generations with nurses. And look where that has got us.
Well, my partner in crime for my other podcast says, there's just some things you just can't throw a lavender bath bomb at and expect to be
Right.
fixed.
I
Right.
love that.
It's true.
Yeah.
It is true. And, I think for me and Nurse Erica, like our podcast has great balance because, where I may do a lot of the behind the scenes editing and, all that hard stuff, Erica has to do a lot of research. I mean, before we have a huge guest on or a big person that's had a huge story, she's got to really make sure that we know what we're talking about. We don't go in there all willy-nilly and just, acting a fool.
We're a good team because Jessica does the stuff that I could never do. The behind the scenes stuff, I would fail miserably. I would never do it on my own. She's great at all the editing and all the creative aspect of. I'm terrible at that.
And when
stuff.
Nurse Erica gets too serious on the podcast, I throw in a little.
You
Little
did that
levity.
today. You did that earlier when we were recording with the American Nurses Association. There was a stressful
did.
moment. You gave
Yeah.
it some levity.
I tried because I was just like, ooh, okay. well, but it's a good balance. It definitely is a good balance. But yeah, I mean, I would say advocacy wise, I do what I can do, but I have to give props to Erica for the knowing and having to talk all the hard stuff. So,
But I think one of the things Jessica, I think that you do that I think is so powerful is you give voice to nurses. Like people are following you who aren't nurses just because you put out good content. And while it
I have
may
a
be
lot of
nursing,
teachers and I have a lot of I do a lot of work humor too. And I just think that a lot of what I do, people just see as relatable day-to-day grind and things that are difficult and stressful. Instead of sugarcoating it, I'm kind of honest about and transparent about what you deal with in your work life.
yeah,
It's not all hunky dory.
it's true.
Uh, you have a patient that gets on your nerves. You have a coworker that gets on your nerves. You have a manager that beyond gets on your nerves. It's normal. It's typical. And yeah, I think that people, when they can relate and see themselves in what you're doing or whatever video you're making, that's when people connect, is when they can actually see themselves in that scenario.
Absolutely right. And I think so many of the scenarios that you show are like totally relatable. Like I'm like, oh yeah,
My favorite ones are the work bestie ones because I think everybody bonds with one coworker. They've got one person that's like their ride or die or their somebody of anybody that you can just go to, and those are some of my favorite videos to do because, like I just did one where your work bestie tells you the night before she's calling in sick and you're like, no, bitch. Oh, can I say that on here, Kevin? I don't
of
know.
course, yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm like, we do on our podcast, but
Yeah, certainly the explicit is usually checked on mine. And because one, because I'm a little bit of a body mouth, and two, like we're all grown ups. Like we're all grown ups. You can use whatever
Right.
language you want.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So
We were giving me and Lisa Wolf were giving a talk just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And during the talk, I said a bad word, and I was like, not supposed to say that. Sorry. And I'm
well,
like,
when I'm on poor Tina, good nurse, bad nurse, she's so sweet. But on hers, yeah, she
yeah,
doesn't.
it's
I saw. I'm like,
she works clean for sure. She works clean
yes,
for sure.
I have to be careful.
I had to curb myself. So I was like, oh,
Although, don't let her fool you. Tina's got a little wild side. Sometimes we call her ex Tina.
She does. She was on the cruise with us.
When
I seen that. She looked like she was having a good time.
she did,
Mhm.
it was nice to see her cut loose and relax. She works hard with work and podcasts, and she had a great time. It was nice to see her have fun. We all need that every once in a while.
So what made you guys get started in the social media thing anyway? Like what made you guys get started in just kind of putting your life out there, putting your brand, your
Yeah.
character, your personality, putting that out into the world?
I love this question because I always thought I was going to be a soap opera actress growing up.
I
I,
can
I
see
mean, I
that.
know
Can't
this
you
sounds
see that?
cheesy,
Can't you totally see her being a
but
Like you got the look. You got the look
I
for it.
visualize myself like on General Hospital or All My Children. That would have been my dream, to do something in acting. Obviously, that didn't pan out. So I don't know. I did nursing because I also feel like I don't want to say entertainment. I know that sounds cheesy, but in a way, you kind of are eh, relating and I don't want to say performing, maybe that's not the best word, but you're captivating your audience. You're trying to teach, you're trying to do all sorts of things to make them have a pleasant experience. And I'm a people person. So
Some
that's,
I,
I don't know if it makes sense or not, but
that does. And sometimes nursing does feel a bit performative. Like
it can
Mhm.
be. And I
sometimes
like
if
to make people laugh. And so if I could make my patient relax and make them giggle a little bit, it made me feel like I was still kind of able to do entertaining and caring for people. And maybe other
yeah.
people that like acting will understand what I'm saying. It's not, I don't want to depict myself like a fraud. I'm just saying it was a way to make people happy, I guess. That's the only way I can describe it. But when nursing started to get to the point of burnout, as many of us have experienced, um, I don't know. I just dabbled in, let me try to throw a few videos out there. And then that turned into maybe I'll start a business page. Maybe I'll see if I can make money on this. People like it. They're laughing. I don't know. Maybe I'll keep doing it. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I liked it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It didn't
That's
feel like
awesome.
work. Yeah.
That's
What about
awesome.
you, Erica? How did you get into
Oh
it?
gosh. For me, it was so not a plan, and it was kind of an accident. I am the least likely person to be on social media. You know, my social media experience consisted of me posting pictures of my kids at dance competitions
Yeah.
forever and ever. And then in the very beginning of the pandemic, my son had moved home, you know, because of COVID, and they just kept talking about this thing called TikTok. I didn't really know what it was, but I downloaded it to spy on my kids because I'm that mom. I'm that helicopter mom. And so, you know, with TikTok, you immediately kind of get in the algorithm, puts you where you belong. So I started seeing all this nursing content and, you know, it was super entertaining, a lot of it. But what there wasn't was anyone talking about anything from a leadership perspective, a management perspective. It was all like bedside nurses, which is great. But I've kind of been in this fortunate position, if you want to call it that, where I have seen both sides, you know, as bedside and then as in management and leadership roles. And so I just started talking about it, you know, posting videos talking about things from behind the curtain that no one ever talks about. And it really resonated. And so I kept talking. And here we
Good thing.
are, 4 years later, and it's grown into something that would just have been inconceivable to me. And honestly, if I had known, I probably would have just stopped because it would have been terrifying to me. So for me, it happened very organically. I've just taken what I've always done on a small local scale for my unit, my friends, my hospital, and now it's just a bit bigger.
Isn't it crazy to see Erica, occasionally you'll post, you know, the on this day ones on
Mhm.
TikTok, and the video quality, even for
terrible.
me, when I post
Terrible.
there, it's what the hell was I doing?
Yeah, who let me do that?
Why?
You'll, the
Why
same
does it look like somebody splashed some milkshake on the lens or something? Yeah, it's funny though, but I think maybe everybody's look like that at that point. I don't know, but I always look back at mine and I'm like, ugh, like what
Yeah,
was I
cringy.
thinking?
you'll find the same thing with your podcast where, you know, a year from now you'll be like, oh my
Oh,
God,
I already do that.
our
I
sound quality
already
was
I
terrible.
can't even listen to those early episodes. Oh
those
God,
the
they're
first couple, the first few were
Yep,
you just have to dive in it. You just have to dive in and figure it out. It's just
I agree.
yeah.
I
yeah,
totally agree. So
yeah. It's whatever they say, fake it till you make it. I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those you got to start before you're ready. Like I bought a microphone. I bought a microphone and was like, oh, and I start a podcast, and I bought all this stuff and then didn't do anything with it for years. And then finally I was like, oh, let's do something. Let's actually do something.
Well, it took us like 8 episodes to figure out Erica's cord wasn't working on her microphone. Like
The amount of drama on the cord on the microphone.
oh my God. Until we
Practically in
finally got to the
tears
point,
every
I'm like,
troubleshoot.
something has to be wrong with your equipment. Like, so, you
I
know,
could
I'm
have
like,
given up. I could have given up just from that alone.
Yeah.
God, I can't believe people hung on after that. And our first episode was like nursing strikes. Like we just went right into the doom and
Dove right.
gloom. Yeah. But, you know, you start somewhere, you know?
How do you guys
Yeah.
pick what topics you're going to cover?
Oh, a lot of like current events, stuff that's in the news, anything, obviously anything related to nursing. Have we ever done episodes that really weren't about nursing? I don't think we have. It's always had some sort of a tie-in
Of course.
to nursing. So even when we did a couple episodes early on where we got very personal talking about our dating history, but even that was related to how challenging it is as a nurse to
Right.
date, you know? Even when we had the world famous psychic John Edward on, he has a background in healthcare. And so he does a lot of predictions surrounding healthcare.
And his son's in med school too, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
everything kind of has a tie-in. And not that we couldn't do other things, but that's just
But we
really
always have, if there's not like a big hot topic or something going on, we always have a running list of ideas. So if at that, you know, that week, there's not something in particular that is like something big in the news, then we'll go back to like our running list of things.
Mhm.
Like we just did an update episode, which actually ended up being great, but we updated
Yeah.
where all these cases are that we've reported on before and like
Mhm.
where they're at now, you know?
Oh, that's
Um,
great. That's awesome.
yeah. So,
We've
um,
traveled to a couple of strikes, nursing strikes,
I
and
I
then
remember seeing that on your pages.
and then we will do a podcast episode, kind of a debrief afterwards, talking about that was actually one of our funniest episodes, was the
to us,
first
it
nurse
was
strike
anyways.
week.
I don't know how anybody else feels about it,
Right?
but
We
we
thought
thought
it
it
was
was.
hysterical. No one else probably did, but we had been out on the strike line the entire day for hours and hours. It was hot. We were hungry. We hadn't really eaten. And then we got back to the hotel exhausted, and then we started drinking wine.
And literally, the
I thought,
glass of wine
this
hit
would
us.
be a great time to do a podcast.
Yeah.
That seems like
Well,
that seems like that would, certainly live up to the name Uncorked.
but what we did was
True.
this actually was our only kind of live podcast because
Yeah.
what we did was we pulled the audio from a TikTok. We went live on TikTok.
Yeah.
And it was a long live, and
Oh.
God, it went crazy.
Chaotic.
That's
Yeah,
all.
it was
But
so
it's hysterical.
it was fun.
So what nursing issues have your attention right now? What are the kind of things that you guys are kind of thinking about and kind of pondering?
Always violence against nurses. That just seems to be unfortunately a daily occurrence these days. So,
Certainly always on the ER nurse's mind.
oh yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely. There was just an update earlier today about the Joyce Grayson case. She's the home health nurse in Connecticut that was found dead in the patient's basement last year. So it just was released that OSHA fined the employer, the home health company, Alara
Good.
Caring, and cited them for, knowingly putting their employees in harm's way, because this was a house full of registered sex offenders, and her patient had a history of stabbing a woman. And, let's just send the 63-year-old nurse in there alone.
Oh my
Right?
gosh. That's just crazy.
Absolutely insane. But the employer put out a statement afterwards, after receiving the OSHA citation, which was just appalling to me. And it said, basically, we vehemently disagree and we are going to fight this vigorously.
Who said that?
The employer.
Oh
I'm sorry,
gosh.
you disagree with OSHA, whose whole job it is to ensure workplace safety.
Right?
You disagree with them citing you when you sent employees without a single bit of security into a home of multiple registered sex offenders.
Yeah,
And
like what leg
And
do
then
you
a
have to
woman
stand
lost
on?
her life, and
Yeah,
you think you
I was gonna
didn't
say,
do
in
it.
PS, your
wrong.
nurse died there.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
That's
That's-
crazy. I gotta tell you, as scary as the ER can be, home health's got to be even scarier.
Oh, I can't imagine. I cannot.
Yeah, I used to do home health. I think every home health nurse has horror stories. And that's kind of the point, is there's no safe place anymore. It used to really only be ERs, psych units, maybe trauma, right? But now we're seeing the majority in the last couple of years have been labor and delivery units. Who would have ever thought that? And there's been 2 home health nurses killed in the last year and a half or so. I mean, there's truly nowhere safe in nursing anymore. No setting, no specialty.
No, doesn't seem like it. That's for sure.
It's absolutely true. And not all violence has to, result in someone's life ending.
Right.
Just the idea that, you would go to somebody's place of work and choose to be violent against them in their environment, right? Like, just blows me away.
Mhm.
I don't even know. And I mean, I know that sometimes our patients, not in their right mind, but oftentimes these are patients who are in their right mind, but
Oh, yes.
choose to do these terrible things.
Did you hear recently about the psych patient, Erica, that had a gun in their wheelchair? And
Yeah, I posted a video about that. Yeah.
they've been hiding the gun in their wheelchair for God knows how long.
Maybe for 2 or 3 weeks in a step down unit, trying to remember, but was on a psych hold, was angry because they couldn't leave AMA because of the psych hold.
Was this the one that
and
was?
he was paraplegic, so he had a wheelchair, and all of a sudden pulls out a gun out of nowhere after being there for 2 or 3 weeks and shoots at his own nurse. Thank God misses, and then shoots at some monitors on the wall,
What does
and
that
then
say for
security
sanitizing the
responds.
wheelchair? Has anybody ever wiped the wheelchair down? I mean,
Certainly not.
It would never occur to me to search a wheelchair. Like, maybe if there was a bag hanging on it, sure. But to actually take the wheelchair cushion off and think that would not have occurred to me
Yeah,
before.
but
crazy.
Erica, what kind of wheelchair cushion are you talking about?
I don't know. They think he just put it under the cushion is what they're guessing.
Okay, the kind I'm talking L&D. We ain't got no cushions on the wheelchair, so I need like some
Well, I think it was
context
probably his
here.
own wheelchair from home. So you know how sometimes they have
Yeah,
Oh.
like a
more.
little
A lot of times,
egg
your
and-
chronically wheelchair bound folks will have a,
Yeah.
good sized
Okay,
cushion.
okay, I get you. So maybe it was already. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
And it
scary.
had been there apparently for a couple of weeks. And then when security arrived, he shot himself in the head. And last I heard was, I think maybe they're thinking of taking him off life support or something like that. Not a good prognosis.
Wow, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Crazy's
it's
going
not
on.
how that kind of stuff happens.
It's
So-
outrageous. Yeah. You know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently came out and said that healthcare workers have the highest, not one of the highest, but the highest rates of workplace violence, and that we are 5 times more likely to be injured than literally any other profession.
It's I'm not
Like,
even a little
in
bit surprised,
combat,
Doesn't surprise me.
right?
military. I mean,
Yeah,
how
I'm
are
not
we
surprised at all.
number one?
It's
Doesn't
crazy.
surprise me.
It's crazy, and I'm not even a little bit surprised.
Right?
No,
So,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. And
we
sad.
need to start going in with bulletproof vest or something, or
something.
what is it when the catchers in baseball wear the
Yeah, well, catcher's mask.
but just
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
on a bulletproof vest and those, and I
Well,
don't
you
know.
know, that security guard, Bobby Smallwood at Legacy Good Samaritan in Oregon last year that was killed right outside the labor and delivery unit, he was wearing a bulletproof vest.
Who wears a bulletproof vest to labor and delivery?
They
crazy.
had this known threat for several days, a father of a newborn in the L&D unit. And by all reports, the shooter, the father of the infant, could tell he was wearing a bulletproof vest. I assume he was wearing it on the outside, being security. And so he supposedly purposely arched whatever, hit the gun down over to avoid the vest, to
Oh, that's
purposely get
terrible.
in the upper chest neck area.
That's just terrible. Holy cow.
Absolutely.
Some scary times.
Yeah,
we're
it seems like
dealing with.
every time you turn around, there's some kind of nursing issue
Oh yeah,
in the world.
There's never a shortage of nursing issues, is there?
Nope. Every single time. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
Kinda
it's out of
crazy.
out of control.
Yeah.
Next week, Jessica and I are going to travel to Ohio to the State House for a nursing rally that's being put on by the family of Tristan Kate Smith, the ER nurse that took her own life last year and wrote the letter to my abuser. They are organizing this rally to promote mental health support for nurses and also safe staffing.
Which I have
Wow.
to give kudos to her father. Oh, and her siblings as well. But her father has turned this into, he's trying to make positive out of and do the best he can out of a horrible situation of losing his daughter, And yeah, he's trying to help fight the fight, which is incredibly brave and amazing of him,
We
Some
may have to.
Some people could just shut down completely, and that would be totally acceptable as well,
Yeah. And no one would be surprised. So I'd
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
But this is his way of giving some validity and keeping her likeness alive and her memory alive,
And for something good to
and
come.
that's going to be in Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio at the State House on Nurses Week on Friday, May 10th.
Tina's going too.
Oh, yeah, Tina's going to be there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard much about the story. I remember seeing posts about the letter and stuff, and
If you haven't listened to the full letter, you should, because it.
Yeah, we may have to have you guys on the podcast after this rally, and I'd love
Oh,
to hear your
Let-
guys' thoughts and hear a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
So I think that's
Absolutely.
that's an important topic for emergency nursing. And
Yes.
maybe this will be a two-parter. We'll do a little part of just kind of introduction and be like, hey,
Sure.
jump into, hey, you guys went to this rally. Tell me about it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
would
you
love
guys are up
to.
for it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.
All right, to be continued.